friends, today I am going to can some pears. These pears are from my in-laws orchard. The same variety that we have in our orchard, but this year our pears did not produce well because of the late frostbite during spring. The variety they have is the same as the variety what we have in the orchard. This is the Oriental Asian type pear, the moon glow. The skin is firm and the inside is hard and firm as well. They hold up the shape pretty well once you can them, and similar to Bartlett. Bartlett is the one that other canners or other people like to can because it holds up the shape pretty well, and it's also a firmer kind. There are many other varieties that you can find for canning, but it's best to can the ones that's locally produced. And because Bartlett and Anjou, they are not, they don't grow well here in the South, in Tennessee. But this kind, the Asian Oriental variety, they do really well because they are pest resistant and disease resistant. So that's why we have them, and this is what we plant. So for preparation, all you need to do is wash the pears, and then you peel the skin off and you remove the stem and decore. To remove the core inside and the seeds, and any bad spots, any bug bites, you must remove them because they will look ugly. And since these are organic, never been sprayed, even though there's a lot of bug bites and bruises, so yeah, my in-laws did not spray them, so it takes a while for me to clean them. And I have them here. I have ready to go, ready to can pears. I have them soaking here in water because once you slice them, they will start turning brown, discoloration, the oxidation. But if you don't mind the browning, it's fine. You can slice them and put them right away in the jars, and then just wait for the syrup to be ready and pour them inside the jars. But since I'm talking right now and I have prepared everything so that I can do them systematically like what I like to do, so I have them soaking in water, and I'm going to put them individually in the jars for processing. But also be mindful that once you soak them in water, you may lose some of the nutrients from the fruit because it's in water, it's soaking in water. But anyway, if you don't mind the discoloration, it should be fine, because once you process them, you won't see any browning spots and browning color anyway. So okay, for canning pears, it is best to use the wide mouth jars, but since I don't have a lot of wide mouth jars, I'll be using the regular mouth jars. It's the same, it's the quartz size, but it's just the regular mouth. And first thing you do is check the rims or the lips of the jars. Make sure there are no cracks and nicks and nothing catching, because that could prevent the jars from sealing correctly or completely. So it is very important that you check the rims, because if there are nicks and cracks, please don't use them, because you are wasting your time. Then you'll have to redo the process, or you're going to eat the contents of the jars as soon as you can, because they will not keep for too long. Anyway, once you're done checking the jars individually, wash the jars with soap and water. You can sterilize them, put them in the dishwasher, and set the dishwasher on the hot setting, the hot cycle setting, hot temperature, or you can boil some water and individually submerge or put the jars in the boiling water for several minutes for sterilization. And it is best to keep the jars warm until you're ready to put the contents, because when the jars are warm, the likelihood of the jars cracking or shocking is less. So what I have done before is that even though the jars have cooled off, when I pour the hot liquid inside, I did it slowly so as not to shock the jars. So it can be done that way, because if you don't keep the jars warm, it will be cool. So be mindful of those little things. And of course, your safety is your priority. Make sure that you're using the correct, proper tool, like jar lifter for lifting the jars so that you don't get your hands burned. In a small pot, put some water and put the canning lids and bring it to a boil. Sterilize the canning lids for 5 to 10 minutes and just wait and keep them warm and hot until you're ready to use them. For the canning rings, you don't have to sterilize them, but make sure that they are washed and clean. For making the syrup, in a big pot, put some water, 6 cups of water, and put 1 cup of cane sugar. I use organic cane sugar, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. The salt is going to make or going to enhance the flavor of the syrup instead of just pure sweet. There are several ways you can make syrup. You can make light syrup, medium syrup, or heavy syrup. It just depends on what you want or the sweetness that you like for your syrup. But for this recipe, I use the heavy syrup. Bring it to a boil and just wait until you're ready to use the syrup. Just cover and let it boil and simmer. The syrup is ready and the pears are inside the jars. There are 2 ways that you can pack the pears. You can do hot pack or cold pack. Some people like to cook the pears with the syrup and boil the pears for a little bit or for a few minutes. But what I'm going to do, or what I like to do, I usually do the cold pack. I already have the pears inside the jars, so once the syrup is ready, I will just pour the syrup into the jars. To me, it's easier and quicker. Using a funnel, pour the liquid or the syrup into the jars slowly, little bit at a time, because if your jars have cooled off, you don't want to shock the jars because it could crack. Fill the jars with syrup all the way up to the neck area. Make sure you leave at least 1 inch head space for proper boiling process. You don't want to fill the jars all the way up to the lip area or the rim area. Again, leave at least 1 inch head space. And if you need more syrup, because sometimes you would need more syrup, like this batch, you just boil 2 cups of water and add 2 tablespoons of sugar and a pinch of salt. Boil it and just pour into the jars. Ta-da! So after filling the jars with pears and syrup, wipe the lips or the rims of the jars carefully. Make sure they are clean and free from debris and any pieces that could prevent the jars from sealing. And don't use the same spot of the cloth because you don't want to transfer any debris or any pieces from the previous jar to the next jar that you are just wiping on. After wiping the rims, put the lids properly. Use a tong or a lid lifter. There is a stick that's magnetic that you can use, but if you don't have that, you can just use a pair of tongs. Put the rings on. Place the rings securely, not too loose, not too tight, just right. There you go. And these are ready for jarring or for canning process. My canning kit fits 7 jars. Slowly put the jars in place. And it's ready. It's ready for water bath canning or water boiling process. I'm going to do the canning outside. I have here a canner, water bath canner. I have water inside, and I'm going to put the rack with the jars inside and totally submerge the jars. Make sure there's at least 1 inch of water above the jars. Okay, for water bath canning, for water boiling process, make sure there is 1 inch water above the jars and wait until the water boils, and then you can start timing from there. The water is boiling. Now I can reduce the heat to medium, and I'm going to set the timer for between 25 or 27 minutes, because my house is located on a hill, so I can safely set the timer for 26 to 27 minutes. If your house is located below 1,000 feet altitude or below 1,000 feet elevation, you should be fine with 25 minutes boiling process, because that's the standard. Now, if you want to do canning, please refer to the manual for proper process, for correct timing, because there are certain times for quart jars, for pint jars, and if you're doing water bath canning or if you're doing pressure canning, you need more boiling time and more processing time. Time to turn off the stove. The canning process is done. Now I'm going to open the canner. Make sure that when you open the canner that you open the lid away from your face, because it's hot. Now I'm going to lift the canning rack with the jars inside. There you go. We'll just let the jars cool off naturally, and once it's starting to cool off, you will hear the popping sound. That's when the jars are sealing. Okay, you will see the middle part of the lids dented or more flat instead of being bulged or raised up. Okay, and we'll just wait for the jars to cool off for at least 12 hours, and then we're going to check the jars later to see if all the jars have sealed or not. Okay, for now, that's it. Okay, the canning or the jarring process is done. After 12 hours, or when the jars have completely cooled off, check the jar lids. Make sure that all the jars have sealed. You should feel more flattened instead of bulged up or raised up, the middle part or the center part of the canning lids. And after 12 hours, you can safely remove the canning rings and wash the jars, especially when you are canning fruits. They get sticky, so it's best to wash the jars to make the jars clean. And after removing the rings, wait for a few more hours, because sometimes after you remove the rings, the pressure inside gets released, especially when the jars did not correctly or did not seal correctly or did not seal properly. Okay, then you can do 2 or 3 things. You can eat the contents of those jars that did not seal correctly, or you can refrigerate them. The contents inside will stay in the refrigerator for 2 to 3 weeks before they go bad. Or you can reprocess the contents inside. You transfer the contents inside using a different jar. After you remove the rings and after you wash the jars, wipe the lids and write the name of the fruit that you just jarred and write the date on it so you know when you did this process. And for storing, you can store the jarred fruits in a box or in your pantry. Just make sure that they are safe, because these jars are breakable, okay? The contents inside, the fruits that you just jarred, you can eat them next month, next year, or many years from now, even after 5 years, as long as the seals are still intact. And you do need to check the jars and the contents inside once in a while so you know that they're still okay. And once the jars are empty, once you have eaten the contents inside, you can save these jars and use them again for later canning or jarring process. Okay? Canning or jarring is not hard. It's fairly easy. It's a way to preserve food, especially on your seasonal fruits and vegetables. It does take time though, but it's worth it. Okay? I hope you enjoyed this video. and feel free to share this with your families and friends. You can do it too. If I can do it, you can do it too. Okay, just make sure that you follow the correct instruction, the manual, and make sure that your safety is your priority. Okay, enjoy canning, stay healthy.